Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Kung Fu. A great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I thought it was such a beautiful moment of just like everyone together. The entire family, their significant others, and then there's the whole Nikki thing, because I love that Jin's like, oh man, look at all these couples, and Athena's like, Dad, stop, and kind of points towards Nikki. He's like, oh, baby girl, I'm so sorry. She's like, I'm fine, and it's like, yeah, that kind of does suck that everyone's in some happy, committed relationships now, and then you're kind of in a situation you're in, but obviously, the Shin Family Restaurant is about to have its grand reopening in 2 weeks. Obviously, the community, city in general, has been piecing itself back together. And we kind of pick up some of the aftermath of last season, in particular, Althea's situation. She came forward about like using like the flaw in her app to basically let everyone know about the earthquake. So yeah, that's being asked. The DA apparently is going to be taking that into consideration. I don't think it's going to go her way, and I think that's going to be the sucky thing of she potentially could end up facing like big criminal charges regardless of like the good you did. So I mean that also opens her up for a massive lawsuit, I'm sure too. So like it's going to be a 1-2 punch. I mean, her and Dennis, she has to obviously move back in with her parents, which kind of causes issues with her and Dennis. And I love that she's like, they're making out. She sees her stuff, like she sees like her stuffed bunny or whatever. She's like, no. They're making out. He looks and see a photo of her younger by her dad, and I love the camera zooms in on her dad's face and his eyes staring at Dennis, and Dennis like puts the picture down. It's like, yeah, that's going to be enough to kill anyone. It's like, yeah, it's also like in her childhood bedroom. It's all kinds of weird. So that kind of ruins the mood there. I do love that Althea is kind of running her parents, because Nikki was like, oh no, I want to say like it was either Nikki or Ryan who was like, oh, so what's like having Althea back? And they're both looking like, yeah, it's good. Oh yeah, it's good. It's great. It's like, yeah, Althea's kind of got them on a schedule, and it is the thing of, yeah, they're an older couple. They are live their lives. They like things a certain way. So yeah, they're very stuck in their way. And Nikki's like, maybe you shouldn't focus so much on our parents. Kind of take your need to kind of focus on something other than everything else that's going on, and kind of divide that up, which a lot of people in this particular case are. It's not just Althea trying to do that. So is Nikki. She's, apparently staying in Henry's place because it's like, well, she's like, yeah, it's a good place. I don't want to give that up. But it's also like, right, it's her way to kind of hang on to Henry, to some extent. Then there's also the fact is that she's also, she's a shifu at the, she basically took over Henry's job. And so it's like, yeah, it's just kind of both things are still tied to Henry to some extent, even though she's trying to move on. She's still teaching during the day, doing her vigilante thing at night, and she kind of doesn't have a partner in crime. Granted, she still have her fellow partners in crime, like her brother and sister, because I love that it's like, oh my god, like the truck that had all these appliances specifically that would go to the restaurant and was stolen. It's like, what are we going to do? Well, the police, it take too long, and by the time they get involved, it could get sold. All right, everyone pulls out their phone. I love this, like, yeah, this well-oiled machine of like, all right, let's get to work, people. And everyone's like, it's like, Amelia's like, oh, we kind of got, there's kind of like no phones at the dinner table, but it's like, considering everything going on, it is once again this beautiful thing of like, yeah, we put this well-oiled machine together, and it's like, of course, we're right on top of everything at the beginning of this season. After 2 seasons of doing this, we're good. I even love when they do run into the bad guys. The guy was about to pull a gun on that. Well, he has a gun out. He's about to shoot Althea. She kicks him in the face. Ryan comes over and knocks him. I'm like, yeah, hit him with the 1-2 combo. And she's like, oh my god, that was amazing. He's like, me? That kick? And she's like, I know. He's like, she didn't even teach me that. I was like, yeah. I was like, of course, like Nikki had to teach you guys a little bit here and there. So I thought that was neat. But she does get a new partner in crime this season, because that's what I was so curious about. I was like, okay, so is like Henry not going to be in this season at all? Oh, he super is. He's in like 2 scenes this episode, but I'm sure we are going to bounce back and forth to like everything that he's up to. So he's not completely removed from this story. But we get introduced to Bo, which I saw the small like 30-second trailer for this season, and I saw him. I was like, what? If you're not a CW person, I am, and just for whatever reason, don't watch a lot of CW stuff. Bo, the actor who plays Bo, was on Legacies. He played Jed, which is so interesting because obviously Legacies just ended a couple months ago. And now it's like, oh, just to see him immediately jump into this. But if you don't know, what makes it even more interesting, that's where almost like, they're not dating in real life, are they? The actor, Olivia, and the actor who plays Bo. I mean, not like it's a bad thing if they are. I was just like, they can't be, can they? Because if they are, that's really, really interesting. I think it's just a little fun thing. Like, they had to do that on purpose. It's just kind of like a wink and nod, because if you never watched Legacies, Olivia's character in Legacies was dating someone else and kind of had a little bit of a torrent affair with Bo's actor's character in Legacy, Jed. So yeah, so them getting together and they're kind of being this like, ooh, like we're so good together thing. It's super funny considering the Legacy thing. So you're almost like, that casting is a little fan servicey, at least for me. When I saw him in the trailer, I was like, no way you're doing the same show together. Like, that's amazing considering like Olivia like left Legacies because I think this opportunity presented itself and she took it. So, so it's like she left Legacies to be this, and like Legacies ended, and now it's interesting. I am curious what Bo's whole deal is. I mean, obviously, we're in the first episode. It's a rhetorical question. Yes, I know the show will explain that. I have to stress that because I think sometimes when I ask these questions, people are like, Jesus, dude, so the show, it's like, yeah, I get it, but that's like the fun of why I do this. And I think some people don't always know that that's why I do that. I ask rhetorical questions like, I know the show's going to end, but it's just like, I like letting people know my thought process. So for example, like the fact is we find out not only is he a good fighter, he's also a hacker too. And you're like, okay, the fact is you got this all locked down. He's like, yeah, my mentor, she taught me everything. I wanted to take, what I got. I didn't want to waste it. I wanted to do some good with. I'm like, are you fucking Batman or something, bro? It's like, you going full vigilante. You're not only like a good fighter, you're also a hacker. Cause even Nikki, like, yeah, she's a good fighter, but she has Althea to be the hacker. So it's like, you, homie, you kind of have it all. You have the looks, the brains, and the muscle. It's like, something going on here, bro. Who are you? Who are you? And the fact is that he, like, that, I almost wondered if he's the real deal, because it's like, oh, he happens to get caught on camera. Cause I don't think, I mean, maybe Nikki hasn't, I'm just not remembering. It probably has come up before, but Nikki doesn't have like that fame and intention. Like, she has some notoriety in the community because of her vigilantism, but like the fact is he got caught on camera and he's kind of a big deal. I almost wondered if that was set up, but it doesn't seem like it is. But it's like, something's off about this guy. And I just don't know. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt from the beginning, be like, oh, you're a good guy. But I'm like, there's definitely something potentially shady going on there. We'll have to wait and see. I feel like he's definitely got some secrets of his own, and I'm curious about that. I mean, obviously, Henry had his criminal background. Sebastian has his. So I don't know if it's necessarily going to be like that. I actually thought that's what Evan was coming to talk to Nikki about. Like, yeah, your Bo, like, yeah, I actually did a little rundown on him. He's actually got this and that. It's like, yeah, I thought, but it's like, no, it's about the Paling question mark situation. So we'll circle back to that later. But nevertheless, continue with like the main through line. I did like that Althea, like, was asking, like, right, Nikki, you met this Bo guy, and Henry hasn't contacted you in like 4 months. Mia is at a monastery, and she still manages to, like, send a message every week. It's like, right, Henry basically broke up with you. She's like, me and Ryan are just worried. We want you to move on. And, like, she kind of snaps at Althea because it's like, it takes everything I've got not to focus on him now. I finally got past the point. I don't sit there waiting for a message and crying about what could have been between us, because what they have is something special. I mean, it is love. They went on magical, mystical adventures together. It's like, you can't kind of beat that. And it's like, yeah, he had to leave for his reasons, but yeah, it doesn't make it any easier. And the fact is he hasn't contacted her, it's like, I think he probably thinks it's better that way because, either he thinks he's completely let her go when in actuality he hasn't, or he just thinks it's better to do what he needs to do. Maybe he's thinking like Nikki's moved on and I hope she has, or I don't know. We don't really know what's 100% in his mind. We know on some level she's still on his mind because he traded the ring to get a ride to Cyprus, but he stole the ring back. I was like, are you really going to let that guy? But it's like, no, I was like, you stole it back, and he did. So, yeah. I mean, the ring had significance, too, because it was, isn't it his grandmother's ring that was given to his mom? So, like, it has, like, from an heirloom perspective, it has significance. So, of course, you wouldn't give that up. But also, it's like, right, it's a reminder also of Nikki. So it's like, I think there's a part of him that feels like I have to let her go, and she's probably already moved on. I hope she has, because she shouldn't wait for me, because I just don't know how long this is going to take, I mean, everyone had to figure things out. I mean, even Nikki, she had something to point towards after her Shifu died. She had going after Jilong, so it's like she had, revenge, but getting justice. Henry, he wants to continue whatever it is his father was working on, so there's that element to it. But Althea's a little more understanding now after Nikki kind of explained like what she's going through, because like Althea's like, right, we didn't know, because Nikki didn't want to share it with anyone. The easiest thing about trying to be okay is by telling. It's not only, she's not trying to just convince her family, she's trying to convince herself by not really opening up to them and telling them what she's really going through. It's her way to try and find a way forward, and hasn't been the easiest thing. But I think, once again, she has other things with all of this going on, just has extra things to kind of distract her from it. So, when they ultimately, Bo, Althea, and Riot end up investigating and end up finding where all the other stuff was stored at, but then there's bombs there. And luckily, with a little Google searching, a little bit of luck, and, some skill, they end up disarming the bombs. But then it begs the biggest question. Why set this place up to be like this? They're not even selling this stuff. They put it all in one room into a warehouse facility place so that they could blow it all up. Why? And just especially blow it up if anyone came looking for it. So the timing is interesting, and because Maylene wanted to not rely on investors. She wanted to own a restaurant herself. But then when she talked to Sebastian, and he's kind of making ends meet on his own, him and other workers are just working at whatever restaurants they can in the meantime. And she's like, well, you're going to have enough money to survive, okay? Even if the restaurant doesn't come back, because they're far behind money-wise, because things were pretty bad because the restaurant was closed for so long. But then you add in the fact is that even if they open it up on the grand opening in the next 2 weeks, it still might not be enough to cover it. They would be more in the red. She was hoping that, right, when it was all said and done, after everything last year, we would be on even ground again. And it's like, we're not. But Sebastian's like, Meili, we would me and this entire family would walk through fire for you. You know that. And for her, she wouldn't want them to have to do that. So she ends up meeting with the investors later on, because she's like, right, we can't make it on our own, so we need backing. So the problem is they're going to want a percentage of it, and whatever she does, she can't make those decisions on her own. She's got, shareholders essentially to answer to, other investors, they kind of get to dictate a lot of stuff to get back their investment plus interest. So there's that. But the timing's too interesting, because, they were already reaching out to her before, but it is that continued conversation of the community still in the process of healing. And the fact is, you were stealing from all these different places, and you were going to destroy all that stuff. I think the purpose of it was, you're not trying to sell it because you don't want to take the chance there'd be a trace back to whoever sold it, and you could, because if it was sold, the police could get involved, potentially people could get their stuff back. You don't want that. You want the community hurting. You want them behind, so that someone, I think this is the investors or someone else, because they even admit these are two different gangs that were working together for these heists. For all the stealing stuff. So I think we got another evil business person in play here, because Russell's main thing of taking control of San Francisco, that is where this takes place, right? I'm blanking on it. It's like, yeah, right? The community. He mainly went through such trouble because he was trying to it was just a control thing, but it was also because I mean he wasn't just going to stop with his neighborhood; he was going to go for the world domination type of thing. But he needed bits and pieces of it to for the grander role. I think someone else might have stepped in where Russell left off and is trying to buy up this community on the low, on cheap, and that's like right by leaving this community's already fractured and destroyed so much or take damage so much because of the earthquake, someone's trying to swoop in and wipe that out, like trying to, like I said, get the community on the cheap. That's what I'm thinking. At the very least, that's what it seems like. So whether the main antagonist is going to be like a Russell Tan minus all the supernatural stuff of immortality he was secretly aiming for this entire time, just a straight up just evil businessman, once again, Russell Tan, then maybe that's all there is, while there's the typical supernatural connotation of like other stuff going on, like unrelated. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, it could ultimately end up being connected, but for now, that and once again the Pei-Ling situation seems to be separate. It is just the first episode in the season. So much can change in what I'm assuming is 12 more episodes, because I'm assuming this is going to be 13 like the previous two were. Continuing on. Since I keep bringing up the Pei-Ling thing, Nikki does run into her. And during the fight, I was about to say that seemed like that was some supernatural power, because that wasn't just like a normal, like, oh, I'm going to push you back. That felt a little like hybrid-esque, like, oh, it got a little supernatural oomph to it when she punched Nikki back. But then eventually, like, I don't know whether it was her coming back to her senses or what, but it's like you could tell partway through the fight she was almost like running low. And I don't know whether that was her the humanity switch like flipping back on, or whether it was just a thing of she was like what it was. But I was like, are you, because at first I was like, is that actually Pei-Ling, or is it going to be the alchemist and she just doesn't remember, like coming back to life might have wiped her memory. But Nikki talks to Evan later and she says, yes, that's Pei-Ling, but one of those moves she used during our fight is the alchemist. So it's two people occupying the same body. We still don't fully know how this happened. I guess like when Russell Tan was defeated and all that energy was released, like how Pei-Ling and the alchemist got back. Like maybe the alchemist was trying to leave, and then in that moment, like Pei-Ling like hide, like maybe we're dealing, speaking of legacies, the whole, Vampire Diaries of it all. Maybe there's a doppelganger situation going on here, like because they're doppelgangers of each other. Because it seems like that's the form that the alchemist chose, but maybe it wasn't even just that she chose it. Maybe there is, once again, a doppelganger thing of like they are tied together. So maybe because I was about to say like, well, Pei-Ling died, so you would think that like if there was, maybe because she was in a different world at the time and considering what her circumstances were, she had a somewhat form of immortality, maybe that prevented her. But maybe there's like a universal equilibrium, again, and a yang to it, where if like, for example, if two doppelgangers are in the same place and if one dies, so does the other. So, but because the alchemist was in her circumstances when Pei-Ling died, it didn't affect her. But one soul being resurrected meant the other one got dragged along too because of that, or maybe some shenanigans went down when Nikki and Mia ended up escaping. I don't know. I don't know what that could ultimately end up being. We'll have to wait and see. But we do notice the necklace on Pei-Ling's neck, and it's also swirling with the same energy from the other side. Also, it also plays into the opening. I do like that every season. Obviously the title sequence represents like the main thread of the season. Like obviously the 8 weapons in season 1 and like the bell and everything in season 2, and now this. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see where that all goes. But I've been talking about the Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing, especially with like Stargirl. So maybe there's a little bit of that going on with Pei-Ling, and there's that whole adage about right the war. There's two wolves in you constantly at war. Whichever one wins is the one that you feed. So I think Pei-Ling and the Alchemist are both two wolves fighting over the same body, and let's see which one ends up getting fed. Luckily, everything worked out in the end with Mia, because it was kind of a very similar circumstance, but we're dealing with kind of an ancient evil in this regard with the alchemist, so we'll see how that plays out. Kind of balancing that with who Pei Ling is, and was, and whether or not Julin, is she fully gone, or is there going to be, did she manage to escape somehow before it all went down? And if she does, it is interesting, like, so your pseudo sister's back and you're not around for it, even though you were seeing your sister for like one episode, and then like, well, to be fair, the alchemist did visit you as well last season, but Nikki had constantly saw your sister all throughout season 1, here and there in season 2, and some of those instances, or at least one of those instances, it was the alchemist messing with her, but still. Everyone, once again, kind of returning to their SOs at the end of it all. Dennis and Althea banging it out in the supply closet because they can't go back home because like that, nearly dying. And she's like, yeah, it kind of gets the engines revving. And then Sebastian and Ryan doing their thing, because I think it's kind of a similar thing of like, yeah, appreciate what you have, because like, yeah, we were like seconds away from death. So it's like, yeah, it kind of gets the heart pumping and the groin area going, if you want to kind of say that. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this takes us. Once again, I don't even know what to even begin to fully expect from this season. Once again, I say that rhetorically. I don't actually want to know. I'm just I like going into the seasons knowing as little as possible, so I'm excited to see what we have in store. They touched on it a little bit that Evan has gone private, and him and Nadia are not working together because it's like, right, let's keep pleasure and business separated. I'm sure those are going to be some crossroads eventually. Was it Chase Mathis? I doubt that whole circumstance is done, because that thread might actually play a role in this all, like with what's going on, because they might be taking advantage of this situation, or at least playing a role in that, because let's not forget Dennis's family is still tied to Chase and everything too. So if like Chase went down, so would they. And so that's a thread that hasn't been fully like dealt with last season. So I could definitely see that playing a more major role, especially if it ends up being like, because I was also thinking about there's that secret society from last season. Because I remember there was all that evidence against the main dude. Once again, he's the actor who played Captain Singh in The Flash. I don't know if that was ever fully dealt with, that secret society. I think they were, but I don't remember. So I was about to say, not unless they or some remnants of them have something to do with all of this. A lot of threads that are still like left over from last season. I'm curious to see if they're completely tied up, or they're still loose ends. It feels like they're still loose ends in those regards, and how that kind of ties into this season. And once again, finding out what the hell Henry's up to, what he's looking for. I'm sure he's going to come back to back home just in time for things to start happening between Nikki and Bo. I could just tell. And once again, finding out more about Bo, who's this mysterious mentor that he's referencing. What happened to her? We'll have to wait and see where the season ultimately ends up taking us going forward. In particular, what happens going into the next episode. Oh yeah, really quickly, I'm figuring I might as well tack this on at the end here as well. I'm just gonna keep it. You might be asking yourself, oh, this is Super-Fanta-Fi. Did you ever label the other things as Super-Fanta-Fis, Michael? And the answer is no. They were untitled reviews. Yes, I always knew that this show had a little bit of a supernatural element, but I was like, I'll probably just keep it like that. Even when season 2 came around, I was like, I should probably keep it like that. Well, I'm changing it now. It's like, well, Michael, does that mean you're going to go back and change those other ones? It's like, well, I could. It wouldn't mean anything, because the title cards in the actual video itself would still say untitled reviews, so can't do anything about it. Is it that big of a deal? Is it really that important in the grand scheme of things? No. Does it change what the reviews are? No. Will it still bother me to know in? Yes, because I'm very anal about that type of stuff, and it's going to bother me forever, and I'm never going to forget, because it's happened before, and I've never forgotten any of those other examples. I'm looking at you, Nancy Drew, Van Helsing, and Dark Matter. Those are the 3 prime examples of me doing a very similar thing, and it's like, oh, it's going to bother me because it's like, cool, that's 26 episodes I've done that for. Ooh, that's going to bother me. That's me specifically referencing Kung Fu. So once again, I get very like anal about that. So once again, that's always going to bother me. But once again, it's a me thing. I'm going to have to deal with like my like OCD-ness about that. So it is what it is. Once again, is it an important thing? No, but I figured I'd go ahead and put it there in case anyone's curious. No one's curious, but you know, I'm there answering that for the figurative person who might be curious about it. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good